33 years ago, I gave my daughter a pendant. That same day, she disappeared. Today, I collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. Just before passing out, I saw the nurse's necklace. It was her. Subscribe now and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Sarah and Amanda, and this is my truth. The human body speaks in whispers before it screams. As a trauma nurse for 15 years, I've witnessed this countless times. The subtle changes in breathing, the almost imperceptible pallor that precedes collapse, all warnings that something catastrophic approaches. That Tuesday morning was ordinary. I adjusted Mrs. Garcia's IV, checked Mr. Patel's vitals, and prepared for the incoming cardiac emergency. The paramedics burst through the ER doors, their voices sharp with urgency. Female, early 70s, possible myocardial infarction, found collapsed on Dorchester Avenue. I moved with practiced efficiency, helping transfer the frail woman to our table. Her silver hair fanned across the pillow, face contorted with pain. I leaned in to place the oxygen mask, murmuring reassurances as I'd done thousands of times before. "We're taking care of you. Try to stay calm and breathe normally." That's when it happened. The moment that would fracture my life into before and after. The elderly woman's eyes, clouded with pain, suddenly widened. Not with the fear I typically see, but with a shock of recognition so profound, it transcended her physical agony. Her gaze wasn't on my face, but fixed on my neck, on the butterfly pendant I'd worn every day since I could remember. Her hand shot up with surprising strength, fingers trembling as they reached toward my necklace. "Amanda," she whispered, the word barely audible beneath the oxygen mask. Something electric jolted through me. The name meant nothing consciously, yet my body reacted as if struck. My hands froze. The cardiac monitor beeped frantically, matching my own suddenly racing heart. "She's going into VTAC," Dr. Chen shouted, pushing past me. "Get the crash cart!" I stumbled backward, unsettled by the woman's penetrating gaze and that name that hung in the air between us. As the team worked to stabilize her, I found myself touching the pendant, my lifelong habit when anxious. The gold butterfly with turquoise enamel wings and tiny diamond accents had been with me since before my earliest memories. "Sarah, are you okay?" Lisa, another nurse, touched my arm. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just need a minute." In the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection. Sarah Mitchell, 40, wife to David, mother to Lily and Emma, pediatric trauma nurse. My identity had always felt solid, despite the mysteries of my childhood. My adopted parents had found me wandering alone at a gas station near the Canadian border, traumatized and with no memory. The pendant was my only connection to whoever I'd been before. I touched it again, feeling the familiar contours. The secret compartment I'd discovered as a teenager containing that cryptic inscription, "For A, fly high but remember the way." That night, my dreams were invaded by fractured images. A carousel spinning too fast, a man in a suit extending his hand, the crushing sensation of not being able to breathe. I woke, gasping, my fingers clutching the pendant. "Sarah?" David murmured sleepily beside me. "The nightmare again?" I nodded, unable to explain the new, terrifying certainty forming in my mind. The elderly woman with silver hair knew something about my pendant. About me. And whatever that knowledge was, it had nearly stopped her heart. The hospital corridor seemed longer than usual the next morning. I'd barely slept, the woman's whispered "Amanda" echoing through my restless dreams. My supervisor intercepted me before I could check the roster. "Dr. Chen wants to see you," she said, her expression unreadable. "About yesterday's cardiac patient." My stomach tightened. "Is she okay?" Stabilized. "But she's been asking for you. Specifically, the nurse with the butterfly pendant." In Dr. Chen's office, I learned the woman's name. Eleanor Baker, 70, retired literature professor. No previous cardiac history. "She's fixated on your necklace," Dr. Chen explained, studying me with clinical curiosity. "Claims it belongs to her daughter who disappeared 33 years ago. Normally, I'd dismiss this as post-anesthetic confusion, but..." She hesitated. "Her distress is impeding recovery. Would you be willing to speak with her?" I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. Outside Eleanor's room, I paused to examine my pendant. The one possession that had been with me since before my first memories. The gold butterfly, wings enameled in turquoise, tiny diamonds catching light. I'd always cherished it without understanding why. Catherine Mitchell, my adoptive mother, had respected my attachment to it. "It's your connection," she'd say when I refused to remove it, even for swimming. "Everyone needs connections." When I was 14, I discovered its secret by accident. Pressing a nearly invisible button while fidgeting revealed a hidden compartment with that cryptic inscription. My parents had contacted the police, but the investigation went nowhere. Another dead end in the mystery of my origins. I entered Eleanor's room, heart pounding. She appeared smaller than during the emergency, fragile against the white sheets, but her eyes, sharp blue, locked onto mine immediately, then dropped to my necklace. "It's you," she whispered. I wasn't dreaming. I approached cautiously. "Mrs. Baker, I'm Sarah. Dr. Chen said you wanted to see me." "That pendant," she said, her voice stronger now. "May I see it?" Hesitantly, I moved closer, allowing her to examine the necklace without removing it. Her fingers, paper thin but steady, hovered near it. "It opens, doesn't it? If you press here." She indicated the exact spot of the hidden mechanism. Ice flooded my veins. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I had it made," she replied simply. "For my daughter Amanda's 7th birthday, hours before she disappeared at Wonderland Park in 1992. The room tilted slightly. The year matched when I was found in New Hampshire, confused and without memory. "Inside," Eleanor continued, "there's an inscription. For A, fly high but remember the way." My legs weakened. I sank into the chair beside her bed. "The police report said you were found near the Canadian border," she continued, watching me carefully. "Hair cut and dyed brown. No identification except the pendant you refused to surrender." "How do you know all this?" I whispered. "Because I've spent 33 years searching for you," she answered, tears now streaming down her lined face. "Every missing child report, every Jane Doe, every lead, no matter how small. The pendant felt suddenly heavy against my skin, like it was pulling me toward this woman, toward a past I'd locked away. "I'm Sarah Mitchell," I said defensively. "I've always been Sarah." "Yes," she nodded, understanding in her eyes. "You are Sarah now, but once you were Amanda Baker, my daughter." I fled the room, desperate for air, for space to process the impossible. But even as I ran, something deep inside, something beyond conscious memory, whispered that I was finally running in the right direction. The file box sat unopened on my kitchen table for 3 days after I'd retrieved it from the attic. Inside were the fragments of my mysterious beginning, the police report from when I was found, medical evaluations, adoption papers, newspaper clippings my adoptive parents had saved. David watched me circle it, like a cautious animal. "You don't have to do this alone," he said gently. "I do, though." My fingers traced the butterfly pendant absently. "Whatever's in here, it's mine to face first." When I finally opened it after the girls went to bed, the musty scent of old paper rose like ghosts. The police report was clinical. Female child, approximate age 7, found wandering at Peterson's gas station, Route 16, New Hampshire. No identification. Non-communicative. Signs of trauma. The medical assessment was worse. Significant sedation detected. Possible chemical suppression of memory. Patient displays extreme anxiety when pendant is removed. I spread the newspaper clippings across the table. Most were local stories about the mystery child found in New Hampshire, but one yellowed article from the Boston Globe caught my eye. "Search continues for missing girl." The grainy photo showed a smiling child with a butterfly pendant, my pendant. My hands shook as I read, "Amanda Baker, age 7, disappeared from Wonderland Park 3 weeks ago. Parents Eleanor and Robert Baker continue to plead for information." Attached to this clipping was a handwritten note. Possible connection, case similarities, butterfly pendant, age, timing. Request to expand investigation, denied by Captain Simmons. Officer J. Reynolds. My phone rang, startling me. The hospital number. "Sarah? It's Dr. Chen. Eleanor Baker is asking for you. Her cardiac readings are concerning. She's insisting she needs to speak with you before..." She paused. "She's refusing additional treatment until she sees you." I arrived at the hospital 30 minutes later, clutching a folder containing copies of the articles. Eleanor looked worse. Her breathing labored despite the oxygen. "You came back," she smiled weakly. "Why didn't you tell someone?" "When I was found." The accusation burst from me. "There was a news article. A police officer even noted the similarities." She closed her eyes briefly. "We did. Robert and I flew to New Hampshire immediately when we heard about a child found with a butterfly pendant. But by then, the investigation had been mysteriously closed. The local police claimed the pendant was common jewelry and refused to let us see you." Her voice broke. "Someone was blocking us at every turn." "Who would do that? Why?" "I didn't understand then," she said. "It took years to piece together that Robert, my husband, your father, was involved with dangerous people. I believe he knew more than he admitted about your disappearance." I sat heavily in the chair beside her bed, the implications staggering. "You think my own father not orchestrated it," she clarified, "but covered it up afterward. There were financial irregularities, connections to a client named Frank Miller. When I started asking questions, Robert left." From her bedside table, she retrieved a worn photograph and handed it to me. A smiling family at a beach, mother, father, 2 older children, and a small blonde girl wearing my pendant. Something cracked inside me then, a hairline fracture in the wall protecting me from the past. In that moment, I saw myself in the woman before me, the shape of our eyes, the set of our jaws. Blood recognizing blood across decades of separation. "I have your smile," I whispered, the revelation simultaneously terrifying and liberating. David listened intently as I recounted my conversation with Eleanor, his historian's mind organizing the fragments into a coherent timeline. "So your birth name was Amanda Baker," he said carefully. "You disappeared at age 7, were found with amnesia, and adopted by the Mitchells." "Supposedly," I corrected, pacing our bedroom. "None of this means she's telling the truth." "But the pendant," he pointed out, "the inscription, the timing." I touched the butterfly at my throat. Anyone could have researched that information. "To what end, Sarah? Why would an elderly woman fabricate this story?" I had no answer. The truth was, I was terrified. Not that Eleanor was lying, but that she wasn't. That my entire identity was built on shifting sand. "What about Lily and Emma?" I whispered. "How do I tell them their mother isn't who they thought?" David crossed the room, taking my hands. "You're exactly who they've always known. Their mother who loves them fiercely. This doesn't change that." The next morning, I requested a meeting with my therapist, Dr. Zhao, who had helped me process my adoption and memory gaps years ago. "The mind protects itself," she explained after hearing the developments. "Especially children's minds. Traumatic memories are often fragmented or suppressed entirely." "Could I really be someone else?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for days. "You're not someone else," she corrected. "You're you. The sum of all your experiences, choices, and connections. Learning about your origins adds to who you are. It doesn't erase Sarah Mitchell." That afternoon, I received a call from a man identifying himself as Thomas Baker, Eleanor's son, potentially my brother. "I understand you've been visiting my mother," he said, his corporate voice carefully controlled. "I'd like to discuss this situation privately." We met at a cafe near the hospital. Thomas, mid-40s, wore an expensive suit and a perpetual frown. His eyes, the same blue as Eleanor's as mine, assessed me calculatingly. "Whatever you believe my mother told you," he began, without preamble, "you should know she's been emotionally fragile since my sister's disappearance. She's seen Amanda in dozens of women over the years. She knew about my pendant," I countered. "The secret compartment, the inscription, information that could be researched," he dismissed, echoing my own earlier doubts. "Look, Ms. Mitchell, my mother is elderly and unwell. This fixation isn't healthy for her recovery." Something in his tone triggered a flash of memory. A man in an office, speaking in that same dismissive manner about the girl. The image vanished before I could grasp it. "I'm considering a DNA test," I said abruptly. Thomas's facade cracked momentarily, revealing alarm. "That's unnecessary and invasive. My mother needs rest, not emotional disruption." "The test would require only her consent and mine," I pointed out. "If she's wrong, we'll know conclusively. And if she's right?" His voice hardened. Have you considered the implications? The media attention? The effect on your family? On hers? If she's right, I met his gaze steadily. Then I am her family. He stood, adjusting his cuffs with practiced precision. I'd reconsider if I were you. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. As he left, I realized my hands were shaking, not with fear, but with anger. Something about his resistance felt wrong, protective not of Eleanor, but of something else entirely. That evening, I sat with Eleanor in her hospital room, both of us silent for long minutes. I'd like to do a DNA test, I finally said. Her eyes filled with tears. After all these years of searching, I find I'm afraid of the answer. Me too, I admitted. But I need to know. She nodded, extending her fragile hand to cover mine. Whatever the result, Amanda or not, I'm glad to have met you, Sarah Mitchell. The DNA test was surprisingly simple. 2 cheek swabs, sealed in separate envelopes, sent to a lab. The 2-week waiting period was anything but. Each day became an exercise in containing the earthquake happening within me. I performed my nursing duties mechanically while my mind excavated fragments of forgotten memories. A carousel horse with peeling paint, the sweet scent of cotton candy, a man's voice calling a name that wasn't Sarah. At home, I began researching the Baker family. Eleanor had been a respected literature professor at Boston University before abruptly resigning after her daughter's disappearance. Robert Baker, a corporate attorney, had died 5 years earlier of cirrhosis. Their children, potentially my siblings, had followed divergent paths. Thomas becoming a financial executive at his father's old firm, Rebecca, a university professor, like her mother. You should meet Rebecca, Eleanor suggested during one of my visits. She was 10 when you disappeared. She took it the hardest. Thomas doesn't seem thrilled about my existence, I noted dryly. Eleanor's expression clouded. Thomas idolized his father. After Robert died, he took over protecting the family name, whatever that means to him. One night, I awoke gasping from a dream more vivid than any before. I was running through a garden of artificial butterflies, massive metal wings flapping mechanically. A man in a dark suit extended his hand. Amanda, your father sent me to find you. His smile never reached his eyes. I sat up, heart pounding, the dream already fading but leaving behind a residue of terror. David stirred beside me. Same nightmare? He murmured. No, I whispered. A memory. The next day, I made 2 decisions: to tell my daughters the possibility that I might have another identity, and to visit Eleanor's home in Dorchester. The conversation with Lily and Emma was difficult but necessary. At 15 and 12, they absorbed the news with the resilience of children who feel securely loved. So we might have a grandmother and aunt and uncle we never knew about? Emma asked, her eyes wide with the adventure of it rather than the trauma. Possibly, I hedged. We're waiting for the test results. Does this mean you're not our mom? Lily asked, the vulnerable question I'd been dreading. I gathered her close. I am absolutely your mother. Nothing will ever change that. This is about adding to our family, not taking anything away. Eleanor's house was a modest Victorian that had seen better days. She'd given me the key, insisting I explore freely in her absence. Maybe being there will help you remember, she'd said. The house felt both foreign and eerily familiar, like a place visited in dreams. In what had been Amanda's bedroom, preserved like a shrine, I found myself opening drawers without hesitation, knowing exactly where to find a small collection of seashells gathered from Cape Cod. On the desk sat a journal with childish handwriting, Amanda's diary. I hesitated before opening it, feeling like an intruder in my own past. The final entry, dated the day of the disappearance, read, Daddy seems worried about something. He keeps checking his phone and looking angry. Mom gave me the most beautiful butterfly necklace today. It has a secret compartment inside with a special message. It's just for me to know. I closed the diary, overwhelmed. In the hallway, my gaze was drawn to a family photograph. Eleanor, Robert, Thomas, Rebecca, and Amanda. The girl's smile was my smile. Her eyes were my eyes. For the first time, I truly considered the possibility. I was looking at myself. My phone rang, shattering the moment. Dr. Chen's voice was uncharacteristically urgent. Sarah, you need to come to the hospital immediately. Thomas Baker is here with legal documents. He's trying to have Eleanor declared mentally incompetent and transferred to a private facility. I arrived at the hospital to find Eleanor's room transformed into a battleground. Thomas stood with a sharp-suited attorney, waving documents at Dr. Chen. A woman I recognized from photos as Rebecca Baker watched from the corner, visibly distressed. "This is a medical determination, not a legal one," Dr. Chen was saying firmly. "Mrs. Baker has shown no signs of cognitive impairment." "She's delusional," Thomas insisted, fixated on the belief that a random nurse is her long-lost daughter. I stepped into the room. "I'm hardly random, and we're awaiting DNA results." Thomas spun toward me, his composure slipping. "You have no right to interfere in family matters." "If I'm Amanda Baker, I have every right," I countered, surprising myself with my steadiness. "And even if I'm not, I'm Eleanor's nurse, and she deserves better than being declared incompetent for pursuing the truth." Eleanor, who had been watching this exchange silently, suddenly addressed her daughter. "Rebecca, you've been quiet. What do you think?" Rebecca flinched as all eyes turned to her. She was slender like Eleanor, with the same silver threading her dark hair, but her posture was defensive, shoulders hunched as if expecting a blow. "I think," she began hesitantly, then straightened. "I think she has Mom's eyes. And Dad would hate this conversation." Thomas made a warning sound. "Becca." "No, Thomas." Her voice strengthened. "I've been silent too long. Dad's not here to intimidate me anymore." The word intimidate triggered another memory flash, a stern face, a warning finger. "Don't tell your mother what you saw." Dr. Chen stepped in diplomatically. "The DNA results should arrive within days. Until then, Mrs. Baker stays here under my care." Thomas's attorney, sensing a losing battle, murmured something about reconvening later and retreated. Thomas followed after giving me a look of pure venom. Rebecca remained, approaching me cautiously after they left. "You really don't remember anything?" "Fragments," I admitted. "Disconnected images. Feelings without context." She nodded, unsurprised. "You were so young, and trauma does things to memory." She hesitated. "I was there that day at the park. I saw something, but Dad..." She faltered. "What did you see?" I pressed. "A man talking to you by the butterfly garden. Dad saw me watching and..." She shuddered. The look he gave me. I was terrified into silence. "Do you remember the man's name?" "Frank Miller." The name fell between us like a stone. He was Dad's client. I overheard them arguing earlier that day. Another piece clicked into place. The man from my nightmare. Not a nightmare at all, but a memory surfacing from the depths. "Why would Thomas fight so hard against this?" I asked. "Against me?" Rebecca's smile was sad. "Thomas inherited more than Dad's position. He inherited his secrets too." After she left, I sat with Eleanor, who had watched our interaction with tired eyes. "I always knew Rebecca saw something," she murmured. "Robert made sure she never told me." I took her hand, noticing for the first time how my fingers mirrored hers, the same slight curve, the same prominent knuckles. "What happened between you and Robert after I disappeared?" "We fell apart," she said simply. "I was consumed with finding you. Robert seemed to accept your loss too easily. When I started asking questions about his finances, about Frank Miller, he left." The next morning, I examined myself in the mirror, seeing my features with new eyes. Eleanor's determined chin, Robert's straight nose. For the first time, I didn't just see Sarah Mitchell, but the ghost of Amanda Baker beneath. At the hospital, I found a stranger in Eleanor's room. A thin, elderly man with the bearing of someone who once commanded authority. "Sarah Mitchell?" He extended his hand. "Martin Gray, former FBI agent assigned to the Amanda Baker case. We need to talk." Martin Gray looked older than his 70 years, the gauntness of terminal illness evident in his sunken features. Yet his eyes remained sharp, assessing me with professional detachment. "I thought I recognized you when I saw you yesterday," he said. "You have your mother's expressions." My hand went instinctively to my pendant. "You were on the original investigation?" "Until I was abruptly reassigned," he confirmed. "When I started looking into Frank Miller's connections to your father's law firm, I hit bureaucratic walls. Evidence disappeared. Witness statements changed overnight. The clinical detachment I'd maintained suddenly shattered." "Are you saying my own father sabotaged the investigation into my disappearance?" "I'm saying someone did. Gray replied carefully. And your father had concerning connections. Eleanor, who had been listening silently, intervened. Why come forward now, Agent Gray? Former agent, he corrected. And because I'm dying. Pancreatic cancer. He stated this without self-pity. I've carried this case for 33 years. When I saw the hospital admission for Eleanor Baker and heard rumors about a possible reunion, I knew it was time to clear my conscience. From his weathered briefcase, Gray withdrew a thick file. I kept copies of everything before they disappeared from official records. Financial transfers between Robert Baker and Frank Miller. The original police report from New Hampshire that noted the similarity to Amanda's case, before it was rewritten. But why? I demanded, my professional composure crumbling as decades of suppressed emotion surfaced. Why would my father want to prevent me from being found? Protection, perhaps, Gray suggested. Miller had cartel connections. If Amanda, if you, had witnessed something incriminating, Robert might have believed you were safer with a new identity than being found by Miller's associates. I tried to process this. So he sacrificed his daughter to protect, what? His reputation? His freedom? Men justify terrible choices when they're cornered, Gray said grimly. From what I pieced together, Robert was laundering money through the firm for Miller. When he threatened to stop, Miller took you, likely as leverage, not intending permanent harm. But something went wrong, Eleanor concluded. Miller was found dead 3 months after Amanda disappeared, Gray confirmed. Apparent suicide, though I always had doubts. By then, Amanda had either escaped or been abandoned near the Canadian border. The room spun slightly as another memory surfaced. Being bundled into a car, driven for hours, left at a gas station with instructions. Wait here, someone will come for you. But no one ever did. I need to see those files, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Gray hesitated. There's more you should know. Your brother Thomas has been actively blocking this investigation for years, since taking over your father's position. He's not just protecting family reputation, Eleanor realized. He's protecting the firm, himself. Gray nodded grimly. I've already sent copies to the current FBI field office. They're reopening the investigation into the money laundering operation, which may still be ongoing. I sat heavily, overwhelmed by implications. My own father, my brother. Your father made terrible choices, Eleanor said softly. But he also lost everything that mattered, his marriage, his daughter, eventually his health. He died alone. Thomas, his only visitor. And now Thomas is continuing the cover-up, I said bitterly. Out of self-preservation, Gray suggested. The statute of limitations on the original crimes has expired, but if the laundering continued under his watch, my phone chimed with a text message. From the lab. Results available for electronic delivery. Authorize? With trembling fingers, I confirmed, then waited as the PDF loaded. Eleanor reached for my hand as I opened the document. The clinical language swam before my eyes until one line emerged with crystal clarity. Probability of maternity, 99.9997%. I was Amanda Baker. I had always been Amanda Baker, beneath the layers of Sarah Mitchell. It's positive, I whispered, looking up to find Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. You're my mother. From the doorway came Thomas's cold voice. This changes nothing. You'll regret pursuing this, Sarah, or whatever you're calling yourself now. I stood to face him, my newly confirmed brother, feeling something hardening within me, a determination that had perhaps always been there, waiting for this moment. My name, I said clearly, is Amanda Baker Mitchell, and you can't threaten me into silence any more than your father could. The DNA results shattered my world into fragments and simultaneously began reassembling it into something new. I was both Sarah Mitchell, nurse, wife, mother, and Amanda Baker, the lost daughter who had finally found her way home through an impossible coincidence. I took emergency leave from the hospital, needing space to process this seismic shift in identity. David, my unwavering support, handled the practical aspects of our suddenly complicated life while I oscillated between shock, grief, and moments of strange euphoria. Dr. Zhao recommended family therapy, which we began immediately. In our first session, Lily asked the question haunting me. Are you going to be different now? I'm still me, I assured her. I'm just more me than I knew. Emma pragmatic as always, had simpler concerns. Does this mean we have to call you Amanda now? I laughed, grateful for her directness. No, honey, I'm still Mom. Still Sarah. Amanda is part of who I am, but not all of me. The real challenge came in integrating my past with my present. Eleanor provided photo albums, home videos, stories of Amanda's first 7 years. I studied them with clinical detachment at first, as if reviewing another person's medical history. It's okay to not remember, Dr. Zhao assured me. Memories may return gradually, or they may remain lost. Either way, you can build a relationship with Eleanor based on who you are now, not just who you were then. 2 weeks after the DNA confirmation, Martin Gray arranged a meeting at Eleanor's house. Rebecca came, visibly nervous but determined. Thomas was conspicuously absent. The FBI has officially reopened the investigation, Gray announced, spreading documents across Eleanor's dining table. They're focusing on the current money laundering operation, but the historical case is relevant for context. What does this mean for Thomas? Rebecca asked, her loyalty to her brother clearly conflicted. That depends on his involvement, Gray said carefully, and his cooperation. I studied the financial records, the police reports, the witness statements with their suspicious alterations. One photo caught my attention. Frank Miller, the man who had approached me at the park. Seeing his face triggered another memory fragment. His cologne, oppressively sweet, as he guided me to a red car. I remember him, I said suddenly. He told me Dad sent him to take me to the hotel because Mom wasn't feeling well. Eleanor gasped softly. Rebecca touched my arm, her fingers trembling. You believe I'm really Amanda now? I asked her. I think I always knew, she admitted. From the moment I saw you at the hospital. There's a gesture you make, tucking your hair behind your ear when you're thinking. It's exactly how you did it as a little girl. The doorbell interrupted our conversation. Thomas stood on the porch, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. I saw the FBI at the office today, he said without preamble. They're seizing records. You should have brought your lawyer, Gray observed mildly. Thomas's composure cracked. They already took him in for questioning. He turned to me, his expression a complex mix of resentment and resignation. You couldn't leave it alone, could you? 33 years of carefully maintained damage control, undone in 2 weeks. Damage control. Eleanor's voice shook with fury. Is that what you call covering up your sister's kidnapping? Protecting the people who took her? I was protecting the family, Thomas shouted. Dad's legacy, the firm, our reputation. I was 7 years old, I interrupted, my voice deadly quiet. I was taken from my family, drugged, abandoned, and left with no memory of who I was. All to protect reputation and money? Thomas deflated visibly, sinking into a chair. I didn't know the full story until Dad was dying. He confessed pieces of it, that Frank took you to scare him into compliance, that something went wrong, that Frank ended up dead. And instead of coming forward with the truth, you continued the cover-up, Rebecca said, disappointment heavy in her voice. I inherited his position, Thomas said hollowly. His connections. I thought I was protecting what he built. You protected the wrong things, I said, finding strength in a certainty I hadn't known I possessed. But you can make different choices now. The next day, Thomas voluntarily went to the FBI, accompanied by a new attorney. He provided evidence of the ongoing money laundering operation that had continued after Robert's death, though he claimed limited knowledge of its full extent. As the investigation unfolded, I began the legal process of amending my identity, not to erase Sarah Mitchell, but to incorporate Amanda Baker. The name on my driver's license would soon read Amanda Sarah Baker Mitchell, acknowledging both the child who was lost and the woman who found her way. Memories returned in unpredictable waves, triggered by scents, sounds, fleeting images. Standing in Amanda's preserved bedroom, I suddenly recalled arranging the seashells in precise patterns. Hearing a carousel melody, I remembered Robert lifting me onto a painted horse, his smile genuine in those uncomplicated moments. It's like watching a damaged film reel, I told Dr. Zhao. Fragments spliced together with missing sections. Your brain is reconstructing what it can, she explained. Some memories may never return, but you're building bridges between your past and present. The most difficult bridge to build was with Thomas. Unlike Rebecca, who embraced our reconnection with tearful relief, Thomas remained distant, caught between self-preservation and genuine remorse. The FBI investigation had shaken the foundations of his carefully constructed life, his position at the firm suspended, his reputation tarnished. 6 weeks after our DNA confirmation, he requested a meeting at a neutral location, a quiet park overlooking the harbor. "I've been offered a deal," he said, without preamble. "Full cooperation in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Are you taking it?" "Yes." He stared at the water. "I'll lose everything professionally, but—" He hesitated. "Dad lost everything that actually mattered. I don't want to repeat that mistake." It wasn't an apology, but it was a beginning. Thomas would never be the brother I might have had without the trauma of separation, but perhaps we could build something new from the wreckage. Rebecca proved easier to connect with. She carried her own guilt, the burden of having seen something crucial but being too frightened to speak. Our shared trauma created an unexpected bond. "I used to imagine finding you," she confessed during one of our coffee meetings. "I had elaborate fantasies of spotting you in a crowd, somehow recognizing you despite the years. And instead, I found all of you through a heart attack and a pendant," I marveled. The pendant remained my constant companion, but its meaning had transformed. No longer a mystery to solve, it now symbolized the impossible journey that had brought me full circle. Eleanor's recovery progressed steadily. We spent hours together, not just recovering the past, but building new connections. She delighted in meeting David, in getting to know Lily and Emma, especially Emma, who shared her love of literature. "She has your imagination," Eleanor observed after listening to Emma's elaborate story about magical butterflies. "You used to create entire worlds from nothing." My adoptive family remained central to my identity. Though Catherine and Michael Mitchell had died 5 years earlier, their love had shaped me fundamentally. I visited their graves, bringing flowers and overwhelming gratitude for the life they had given me. "They would be happy you found your birth family," David assured me. "They always supported your search for answers." The FBI investigation into the laundering operation widened, revealing connections to current cartel activities. Thomas's cooperation proved valuable, though the process left him financially and professionally devastated. Martin Gray's health declined rapidly. During my last visit to his hospital room, he handed me a small box. "Found this in evidence storage," he said weakly. "Technically, it should have been returned to your parents years ago." Inside was a charm bracelet with a single butterfly, the match to my pendant. "Eleanor gave this to you on your 5th birthday," he explained. "You were wearing it when you disappeared. Miller must have removed it, thinking it could be traceable." I fastened it around my wrist, feeling another piece of the puzzle click into place. Gray died 3 days later. At his funeral, I stood between Eleanor and Rebecca, my old and new families merging in shared grief for a man who had never stopped seeking justice. That evening, as I prepared dinner, David found me staring at old photos. Amanda at 5, Sarah at 20, side by side. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I'm neither just Amanda nor just Sarah," I replied. "I'm something new, something formed in the space between loss and discovery." He kissed my forehead. "You're exactly who you've always been, just with a fuller story now." That night, I dreamed not of carousels or men in suits, but of butterflies, thousands of them, their wings creating a turquoise sky as they led me along a path that felt, finally, like home. 6 months after Eleanor's heart attack, the medical emergency that had improbably reunited us, we gathered at her home to celebrate her 71st birthday. The modest Victorian in Dorchester, once a shrine to loss, now hummed with new life. David chatted with Rebecca about historical preservation, while Emma proudly showed Eleanor her latest story. Lily, initially the most hesitant about our expanded family, was teaching Thomas's teenage son Jacob how to improve his photography skills with his new camera. Thomas arrived late, bearing an expensive bottle of wine and the awkward demeanor of someone still finding his footing. His legal ordeal had concluded with a settlement that spared him prison but stripped him of his professional credentials. The firm, its reputation shattered by the investigation, had dissolved. "Mom," he said, kissing Eleanor's cheek, "you look well." "Better than last time you saw me," she replied dryly, referring to his attempt to have her declared incompetent. Their relationship remained complicated, threaded with both love and betrayal. The doorbell rang again. I opened it to find Jack Reynolds, the rookie officer who had questioned my case in New Hampshire, now retired after a distinguished career. "Officer Reynolds," I greeted him, using his former title out of respect. "Never thought I'd see this day," he said, emotion roughening his voice. "Spent 30 years wondering about the little girl with the butterfly necklace." At dinner, surrounded by both my families, I felt a surreal sense of completion. The table included people from every chapter of my life: David and our daughters, representing the life I had built as Sarah; Eleanor, Rebecca, and Thomas, connecting me to my origins as Amanda; and Reynolds bridging the gap between these worlds. "I'd like to make a toast," Eleanor said, rising with a glass of sparkling cider, a concession to her cardiac medication. "To impossible journeys and second chances." As glasses clinked, Thomas unexpectedly spoke up. "I have something that belongs to you, Amanda." "Sarah." He fumbled over what to call me, still adjusting to my dual identity. "Either name is fine," I assured him. We had settled into a careful civility, if not yet genuine warmth. He handed me a small wooden box. "Found this in Dad's storage unit when I was clearing it out. Thought you should have it." Inside lay a collection of childhood drawings signed in wobbly letters. Amanda. Butterflies featured prominently in nearly every picture, as if some part of me had always been trying to find my way back through art. "He kept these," I murmured, surprised. "In his safe," Thomas confirmed. "Along with this." He produced a sealed envelope addressed simply, "Amanda, when she's found." The table fell silent as I opened it with trembling fingers. Robert's handwriting was shaky, the letter dated just weeks before his death. "Amanda, if you're reading this, I've failed in life, but perhaps succeeded in death. The choices I made cost me everything that mattered. I told myself I was protecting you by keeping silent after you were found, that Miller's associates would come for you if they knew. Perhaps that was true initially. Later, it became about protecting myself. I don't ask forgiveness. Some betrayals transcend forgiveness. But I offer truth, finally. I knew where you were. I paid to keep the investigation stalled. I convinced myself you were better off with your new family than drawn back into danger because of my mistakes. The butterfly pendant was your mother's idea, but I added the secret compartment, a place for messages between us that we never got to use. Consider this my final message in that hidden space. I'm sorry I chose wrongly. I'm sorry I lost you twice, once to Miller and once to my own cowardice. Your father, Robert." I set the letter down, emotions too complex to name washing through me. Not forgiveness. Robert was right that some betrayals lie beyond forgiveness, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. "He never told me," Thomas said quietly, "about knowing where you were. Some secrets are too heavy even to share," Eleanor observed, her expression somber but free of the bitterness that had characterized her for decades. Later, as guests departed, I found myself alone with Eleanor in the kitchen. She watched me handling the butterfly charm bracelet that now accompanied my pendant. "Do you regret finding out?" she asked suddenly. "About being Amanda? About all of this?" She gestured vaguely, encompassing the complicated history we'd uncovered. I considered the question seriously. "No," I said finally. "It's messy and painful, and not the reunion anyone would have scripted. But it's true. And I've lived too long with half-truths to regret finding wholeness, however imperfect." She nodded, understanding perfectly. "The Japanese have a concept called kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold. The breaks become part of the object's history, highlighted rather than hidden." I smiled, touching my pendant. Like a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis, the breaking is essential to the becoming. 1 year after the pendant brought us together, I stood at the podium of a small community center facing an audience of families with missing children. Eleanor sat in the front row beside David and the girls, her cardiac monitor occasionally visible beneath her blouse, a permanent reminder of how our reunion began. "My name is Amanda Sarah Baker Mitchell," I began. "For 33 years, I was missing without knowing I was lost. The story I shared wasn't just about separation and reunion, but about identity itself, how it can fragment and reform, how memory protects us from what we cannot bear, and how healing comes not from erasing trauma, but from incorporating it into a larger narrative. I am both the child who disappeared and the woman who was found," I explained. Both the daughter Eleanor lost and the person who built an entirely different life as Sarah Mitchell. Integration doesn't mean choosing between these identities. It means honoring all parts of my journey. After the presentation, a woman approached with a teenage boy. He was abducted by his father when he was 3, she explained. We found him 6 months ago. He doesn't remember me at all. I recognized the pain in her eyes, the expectation that reunion should instantly heal all wounds, the disappointment when it doesn't. Memory may or may not return, I told her gently. But connection can be rebuilt either way, not as it would have been, but as something new and equally valuable. The nonprofit foundation we established, the Butterfly Effect, provided resources for families navigating the complex aftermath of reunification. Thomas, seeking redemption, handled the legal aspects pro bono. Rebecca contributed her expertise in trauma psychology. Eleanor, despite her health limitations, became the heart of the organization, offering hope to parents still waiting for answers. My professional life transformed as well. I returned to nursing, but shifted top psychiatric care, specializing in trauma and memory disorders. The hospital administrators who had once questioned my ethics now pointed to my unique perspective as an asset. Our family expanded and contracted in organic ways. Thomas's son Jacob began spending weekends at our house, drawn to Lily's photography interests and David's patient mentoring. Rebecca, single and childless by choice, became a beloved aunt to Emma, nurturing her literary talents. Eleanor moved from her Dorchester home into a small apartment near us in Brookline, close enough for daily connection, but respecting the boundaries of our established family life. Her cardiac condition remained stable, with careful management. On quiet evenings, Eleanor and I often sat together, sometimes talking, sometimes in comfortable silence. During one such moment, she asked a question that had clearly lingered. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't had that heart attack? If we'd never crossed paths at the hospital? I touched my pendant reflexively. I believe we would have found each other eventually. The pendant was always leading me home, even when I didn't know I was lost. She smiled, tears brightening her eyes. The butterfly always finds its way. That night, I added a new charm to my bracelet, a small gold heart alongside the butterfly. Not to replace what was lost, but to honor what was found. In my dream that night, I stood in a field where 2 paths converged. One traveled by Amanda Baker, one by Sarah Mitchell. At their intersection bloomed thousands of turquoise butterflies, their wings catching sunlight like tiny diamonds. They rose in unison, forming not 2 separate paths, but a single, shimmering road forward. I woke with tears on my face, but peace in my heart, finally understanding. I hadn't lost myself when I disappeared at 7. I hadn't betrayed my adoptive parents by finding my birth family. The broken fragments of my identity weren't meant to be forced back into their original form, but transformed into something new, a mosaic more complex and beautiful than either original could have been alone. The pendant at my throat and the charm on my wrist caught the morning light as I dressed, small weights anchoring me to all parts of my story, no longer symbols of what was lost, but of what had finally, improbably, been found. For A, the inscription had always read, "Fly high, but remember the way." After 33 years, I had finally done both. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.